Hello and welcome to Omega Codex. My name is Sanal and this is the second video in the series of health checks in .NET Core. If you haven't watched the first video, I would recommend you to watch it first so that it sets the context. If you are new to the channel, a subscription to the channel would be great. Before we start, let's recap on what we covered last time. We got to know that health checks are about getting near real-time information about your applications and services. It helps us in responding to the failures faster and take corrective actions. We also created a basic health check in .NET Core and extended it to implement health checks for our downline services like databases and web APIs. Now let's jump to other features available as part of health checks middleware. In this video, we will cover about health check routing, filtering your health checks, customizing your output, customizing HTTP status code, and health check publishing. So let's get started. Let's start where we left off last time. So this is our main startup code where we had set up our health checks. Let's start with health check routing. So as we saw in the last video, health check routing endpoints are set up using map health check, and this method can be used to set up an endpoint of your choice. So we could have something like all, and now if we start the project and go to our previous health check endpoint, it wouldn't show up anything. We get a 404 for error. But if we go to all, we get our health status. So now it is showing up unhealthy because my SQL server is not connected. We can configure this health check endpoint to work on specific host names as well. For that, we can use a method called require host, and which would require a omegacodex.com/7061 to work. So now if we check with our local host, it shouldn't work for us. So we get a 404 error. We can also make it generic to work with a particular port number. So if we use star at this point, and let's see how it works out. So now it works for this particular port number. So it is useful when you deploy your application on servers, and usually the port numbers which it runs on is 8080 or 443. We can restrict to that particular port number and not putting a hostname restriction, and it would work on all our environments. We can also make it secure using another method called require authorization. This uses .NET Core's authorization middleware. So to make it work, we will need to add authentication to our application. So let's do that. Add authentication. We will need to add package. And we will add a JWT bearer configuration. So for my application, just defining some configuration values, and let's jump to the completed code. Also, I need to add this one, user authentication. Otherwise, my token validation would fail if I don't add this. Now let's run it. And if we go to our health endpoint, we should get a 401 error. So it requires an authentication token for this endpoint to work. Let's use curl to access our API. You could also use Postman to check the output. And we get, sorry, there was a typo. So we get unauthorized. I have created a dummy token using JWT.io. So this is a website where you can set up your parameters and you can reverse engineer your token. And let's put it here. So now I get unhealthy. You can also see that the status returned is service unavailable. That's the status code returned by health check when the status is unhealthy. So this way you can secure your health check endpoints, which would require an authorization token, or you could use other authorization mechanisms which are supported in .NET Core. Now the next one I want to show is creating additional health check endpoints and using a filtering mechanism. What we have done till now is like we have created set of health checks, and whenever we hit the health check endpoint, all our health checks are running. But what if we want to use only a specific set of health checks? We don't want to run all the health checks every time. For that we can use filters. So let's create additional endpoints. You could always create more health check endpoints. So let's call it HC and let's define health check options. And how we do is by defining a predicate. So in predicate we can do something like this. Just my anonymous variable in tags dot contains, maybe let's call it simple. And we'll make a modification here. In our application health check, we'll add tags. The tags parameter is an array, so you could define multiple tags for your filtration, and let's define it simple. And for now, let's remove our authorization on the endpoint so that we can still run it on the browser. So let's run our usual endpoint, and we are still getting it unhealthy because, as I said, the SQL server connection is not working, so that's why we are getting unhealthy. Now if we go to HC, which we defined, we get it healthy because only our web API health check is currently running when we are using this, and we are filtering the required health checks using this method. This way you can create filtered health check to run a specific set of health checks. As I said earlier, that when you get an unhealthy status from your health check endpoint, you get 503 as the HTTP status code. So if we open the developer console and just refresh it, you can see the status is 503. Now if you want to customize the status, we can also do that. Check options, there is a property called result status code. Set it like this. Let's set it 501, internal server error. So now you see we get 500 instead of 503 for our unhealthy status. So this way we can configure the HTTP status code we want to return for each health status. The next topic we are going to check is customized outputs. Now we saw that for any health check, we are just getting the health status, healthy, degraded or unhealthy. But what if we want more detail? Like we have 2 health checks and we want more detail about which one is failing or any other information we can get. That you can do using customized output. So let's see how we can do that. Let's create a new one called app health checks. And this time let's call it detail. Options. There is a property called response writer, which takes a delegate. First parameter is your context, and the second is an object called as health report. So let's add some code to this. I'll just add some code to make it faster, and I'll explain the code. I'm just setting the content type of the response, and then I'm using a JSON writer and getting some information from health reports. I'll just add some code to make it the result of executing a group of health check instances. So whatever health checks it executed, it represents the result of that. And we could get the status of the overall health check. Then we are creating a object inside that JSON called result, and we are adding more details. So this entries property in health report has the entry for each health check which was done. Here we add the key, which is the name of the health check, then the status of that health check, any description that was sent, and any data that is available. We are writing this JSON to a memory stream, and then from the memory stream we are writing it to the response of the HTTP context. So now let's run it. So now we haven't added any filters on this health check, so it will be running all the health checks which are configured right now. So let's see detail, and we get a more detailed information. So the status is unhealthy, and we get results by each of the health check which was performed. So we have our application health check which is healthy, and then we have the SQL server health checks which is unhealthy. So I've been saying that the SQL server is unhealthy, that was the failure, and now you can see that that is the actual reason why the overall status of the health check is unhealthy. So this way you can customize your output. So here I presented it as a JSON output. If you want it to be an HTML output, you can do an HTML writer and send the response accordingly, or you just want a simple string detailed instruction, you can present it that way. It depends on whatever is the consuming service which is trying to get this data. Based on that, you can customize your output and provide the result. So till this point, the examples which we have seen is of a pull mechanism. So we have exposed an HTTP endpoint, and we are asking any monitoring service or any other service to pull the data from this endpoint. Now what if we want to push the data? So that's where health check publishers come into picture. It lets you publish your health check result periodically to anywhere, whatever endpoint or output stream you want to provide the data. You can use health check publisher and put in your own customizations to publish the result periodically. So for that, we have to implement another interface called health check publisher. So let's create a new class in our health check directory, and let's call it custom health check publisher, and implement. So it has a method called publish async, which can be used to set your output for publishing. So as an example, we will publish our result to console. We'll just add the code to speed things up. So the first parameter here in publish async is the health report. We saw the same health report when we were doing customized output. So the same health report is available as a parameter here, and you have the cancellation token. And what we are doing here is based on the health status, we are setting the color of the console output and just writing the status of our health check. We need to include this health check publisher in our startup. So we have to configure our health check publisher options. So there are two main properties here which we can set up. One is the period. It is the interval after which a health check will be conducted and the result will be published. As it says, so it gets or sets the period of health check publisher execution. So the default is 30 seconds. If you don't provide a value for this, it would publish the result every 30 seconds. For now, let's set it 5 seconds. Another one is delay. Delay is the initial delay after which this health check publisher would start running. During the startup of an application, you can set a delay, and after that period it would start running the health checks. So let's just set that to 10 seconds. And another thing which we need to add is add singleton of I health check publisher. Let's start and see the output. So remember, we have sent our output to console. So let's check in our console. So now it has started running and our probe status is unhealthy, and we can see an error which it encountered when it was trying to make a database connection. We can again see that it is coming up as unhealthy. So let's go back and comment out our SQL server check and run it again. And you can see now it is coming as healthy, and every 5 seconds you're getting the published result. So the same method, publish async, can be used to send to any monitoring service endpoint or a text file, any kind of output depending on your requirement for your application setup. We can also add the filtering concept in health check publisher as well. The options in health check publisher options does have a predicate property. So it is the same property which is available as part of your health check options. A similar predicate can be used here. You can use hc.tags contains simple, and it would only run that specific health checks. That brings us to the end of part 2 in this series. In the next video, we will talk about health check UI, some other integrations available, and we'll look at some examples on how to use these checks with some of the Azure services. As always, don't forget to like the video if you have enjoyed it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do it. It means a lot. Let's give that algorithm a little push. Till next time, this is me signing off. Adios.